offers a plan for fixing this problem. Unless we return to a gold standard, I believe this problem may be unfixable. This is news I feel everyone needs to know that goes largely unreported each week. We're going to go to a break, and we're going to come back with Mark Steckbeck, Professor of Economics, and after that we will go to your phone calls. Hello, and welcome back to the Real News. We're here today with our guest, Mr. Steckbeck. Are you with us today, sir?
Yes, I am.
Doing okay today?
Yes, I'm doing fine. How are you, Frank?
Doing good. Mark Steckbeck is a professor of economics at Campbell University. I'd like to start by just letting you tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
PhD from George Mason University in economics. I was teaching at a school in Michigan for a few years, moved down to North Carolina about a year and a half ago, and I've been teaching here. Do a bit of consulting on the side. My interests are dealing a lot with labor issues, law and economics, and institutional aspects of our market economy.
Well, I'd like to start, Mr. Steckbeck, by asking you your opinion of the state of our economy in this recession, and what do you see happening in the short term, next 6 months or so?
I don't know if I'd say it's a recession. Data right now, actually something I released Friday, shows this last quarter's growth annualized at 0.9%. Annual rate of growth of GDP. So we're not technically in a recession. Are we down? Yes, spending is down. Consumer confidence is at its worst level, actually I think in about 40 years. The housing market, the banking industry are certainly problems to be considering. So I would say right now we're not technically in a recession. Where do I see us in the next year or two? I see the housing market getting tighter. I see the banking interest, the banking sector incurring a few more problems. And my big concern right now is probably inflation. The Fed has reduced the Fed funds rate 2.5% over the past year, and I think that's something that needs to be, we need to consider that when looking at where the economy's going.
We've covered quite a bit on the devaluing of our dollar. From your perspective, how serious do you think we find the state of our currency in today?
Go to the gas station, and one of the problems with high gas prices is, of course, the devalued dollar. It takes more dollars to buy oil to produce the gas. That's a problem. Again, if I had this data, I probably would be on the phone with you sharing the information, or had the information, I'd be out capitalizing on this. It's very, very difficult to make projections. I would say that I think that the dollar I think the Fed has opened up the spigots a little too much, put it that way. I'll put it that way. It's in terms of both interest rates, the devaluation of the dollar, and inflation. I think we're going to see a tightening. The Fed has said they don't plan on reducing interest rates anymore. Therefore, they're going to stem increasing the supply of dollars in the market. I do think the Fed is going to do a little contractionary monetary policy, but I think in the short run we do have some problems. And in terms of the devaluation of the dollar, it's one of the reasons why a lot of people push for the gold standard.
That's something that I advocate, the gold standard. I think it was a huge mistake for the United States government to ever move away from the gold standard.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, if you asked me that, I would have said there are reasons for being off the gold standard, and as long as we have an independent Fed that is a good steward of monetary policy, that would be fine. But I think beginning about 10 years ago, the Fed moved into some areas that we're realizing there are a lot of information problems that they don't have. I think Alan Greenspan must take some credit for the housing collapse we see today, certainly for the banking problems we have going on right now. And I don't think that Ben Bernanke really knows how to handle what's going on that well. So I think that the prognosis of many economists are that the Fed has not necessarily done a very good job over the past decade. So I might be on the bandwagon with you in terms of the gold standard. Maybe it would be a more stable institution.
Mr. Steckbeck, this is Brian. When we came off the gold standard in 1971, the M3 was approximately $800 billion. 2006, when the Fed stopped reporting M3 conveniently, we were at approximately $10 trillion. Do you see us coming off of the M3 as a disturbing sign?
If you look at the growth, actually just take CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which is a gauge of inflation, and you graph that out throughout the 20th century, actually since 1913, and we're going to begin there, the founding of the Federal Reserve. It is right around 1970, 72, actually, you see a huge increase in the CPI, which of course is highly correlated with the supply of money. The gold standard is a disciplinary device, but what you did have at that time is you had Johnson's Great Society programs and the funding of the Vietnam War, which put a lot of pressure internationally on the dollar. Now, countries were tied to the dollar based on the Bretton Woods Agreement, and the dollar was tied to gold, and a lot of foreign central banks were threatening to bring these dollars to the central bank and cash them in for gold, and that's why Nixon suspended the gold standard. And I think that has been a very big problem. Yes, it has reduced the disciplinary device that was in there to stem inflation. In other words, every time you go to the bank and you get fewer dollars, your return on your investments are less, and you go to the grocery store and you takes more dollars to buy your groceries, you can thank the Fed for that.
Do you see the global commodity crisis, not only, of course, in crude oil, but with particularly wheat, rice, those types of commodities, being linked to the dollar? Is that far beyond that?
That's hard to say. Certainly the crude is, I would say that the depreciation of the dollar has been a big influence in that. Some speculations are that the declining real interest rate has caused the spot price of crude oil to increase dramatically. In terms of food prices, I think one of our biggest problems is just our farm policies in this country. We are, not only farm, but the ethanol subsidizing. We are paying farmers to continue growing corn and using more and more of this corn for the production of ethanol, which has been shown over and over to be a least efficient means of transportation. You have gasoline powering our cars. Matter of fact, I think one study I read says it takes about 8 gallons of gasoline to produce 7 gallons of ethanol. When you consider the transportation costs, ethanol is transported through trucks, not by pipes, and in terms of the less bang for the buck in the combustion of ethanol versus gasoline. Now, one of the things we could do, my understanding is, and I'm not an expert on this at all, but my understanding is that sugarcane is a much better source for producing ethanol, but of course we have the sugar lobby in this country, which prevents the importation of sugar cane from other countries at a lower price. Right now we pay about twice the world price for sugar. So we're subsidizing corn, which is driving up we're subsidizing ethanol produced by corn, which is driving up the world price of corn, and also now more and more farmers, instead of producing wheat, are now producing more and more corn. So the supply of wheat has decreased, which drives that price up, and that's become a real problem.
Do you think we're going to see the world countries just continue to slowly abandon the dollar and move toward a euro or the yen as the world dominating currency?
Again, that's really hard to say. The purpose of the euro is not just only to facilitate trade within the EU countries, but also was to become the world's currency. The last I read, we were probably about $30 billion a year that the United States receives in terms of interest-free loans. In one sense, for every dollar we give that's out there in the foreign market is an interest-free loan to this country, and it's about $30 billion per year that the United States receives. And of course, Europe wanted to do that. But it's hard to break away from tradition. You have somewhat of a lock-in with the dollar. Countries are used to using that. Now do they turn over? Well, that'll happen when the cost of holding dollars becomes too great. And the current rate, and looking at dollars, I was looking at the exchange rate earlier this week. The value of the dollar since 2002 has depreciated, relative to the euro has depreciated considerably. It's gone from about